Hello everybody and welcome back to Archaeology. How y'all doing? We're here today with the hottest new video game on the market, Elden Ring. Very thrilling, very exciting. Let me tell you before I started, I recorded this whole thing last night, 45 minutes of just idiotic rambling, excited discussion, description, absolute idiocy, but it was a masterpiece. And then when I was done, I looked at the track, and the track was empty. There's nothing in it. Absolutely nothing in it. I don't know what happened. I don't know if my microphone screwed up or if I clicked a button wrong or whatever. But I was quite frustrated. But here I am this morning, back again. We're going to do it over again. We're going to do it from scratch, and we'll see how it goes this time. So I'm now locked in my basement to do this where the sound quality is not as good, but, you know, I want to get you some of this fresh, hot, sick content while this game is still new and thrilling. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about Elden Ring today, which is a game I have been looking forward to for literally years. If you've watched any other videos on my channel, you'll know that I love me some FromSoft games, and I've done videos on Dark Souls, and I'd like to do some videos on some others. So I've been looking forward to this game. I have been an absolutely gargantuan, massive spoiler baby about this game. Have not watched any of the trailers, haven't read anything about it, didn't read any reviews. I wanted to go into it as blind as possible, and that's true. So what you're seeing here is pre-recorded footage, which is going to start up here in just a second, of me playing the game, my first 30 minutes or 40 minutes of sitting down and playing the game. We're gonna speed demon. I've sped up the footage through the character selection stuff. Show you how I made my girl Janet. Janet's always my FromSoft character. I really basically, she's basically just one of the standard faces. I didn't go wild with it, but the character maker is pretty robust. I'm seeing some criticisms of it, and I think those criticisms are fair and valid, but this is certainly a heck of a lot more robust than any previous FromSoft game, perhaps with the exception of the Demon Souls remake, which I think is very similar to this one. So anyway, I have been absolutely avoiding spoilers and just knew nothing about this game, so I went in completely blind, pretty much. I knew like the name of the character, and I'd seen a couple of screenshots. I'd seen the lady with the prosthetic arm, popping her arm in. That was pretty much the only image I'd seen of the game. I really was quite careful about all that. So that's going to make for a slightly interesting, different experience. The previous games, when I've talked about them on this channel, I've talked about how my knowledge of the lore, my having watched every VOD video and all that stuff, it constituted a kind of a historical knowledge going into the archaeological analysis of the game, and that made for an interesting experience. This is going to be a bit more like doing prehistoric archaeology or something where you don't have any kind of a historical record to help you along the way, and I'm just have to rely almost exclusively on the material culture present in the game, the landscapes in the game, the visual storytelling, the architecture. I think is really important, as well as maybe some item descriptions as I find them, so some scraps of history that might be there. Let's talk about this intro for a second. I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in this intro, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I wish that it was animated. I know that's a lot of work or whatever, but I'm thinking of the Dark Souls 3 intro, which is lovely and animated and wonderful, and gives you this real impression of the story and sets a really dark mood. This is a little bit, I don't know, with the still images of random characters named Bloopy Blorb, the fecal matter prince, or whatever. It's got a much more. It reminds me more of the intro to Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, which I don't think are as strong as the later ones. My favorite intro personally is also from my favorite game in the series, which is Dark Souls 2, because I'm a weirdo and I'm incorrect. But I absolutely love that game. Part of that's because that was the first FromSoft game I ever played. It was Dark Souls 2. I played Dark Souls 2, then I played Bloodborne, then I played 3, then I played 1, then I played Demon Souls, then I played Sekiro. Then I played the Demon's Souls remake. Now I'm playing Elden Ring. So very strange route through the recent FromSoft games. I'm actually a pretty recent comer to the series. I didn't start playing until I think Bloodborne was already released. When I started playing, it was not long before Dark Souls 3 came out. So I came to the series pretty late. I'm not one of these folks who's been playing these games since 2011, like I was a hardcore gamer or whatever. I just wasn't. And I had a challenge with, getting into the games just like everybody else. But I loved Dark Souls 2. I loved the atmosphere of it. And I loved its opening sequence. Its opening sequence was not this typical, Jim Bob the Destroyer, killer of kittens or whatever. It was much more narrative focused, and it set the themes of the game really well, and put all those themes out there in a way that was, I think, really strong storytelling, and it set the place for the rest of the game. So I loved that about Dark Souls 2 intro. And the stills I didn't love. I mean, we moved to an animated section here, which is obviously quite reminiscent, I think, of the opening of both Dark Souls 1 and 3, with similar themes being sort of set out here, similar imagery in some ways. I'm going to talk a lot about Dark Souls 2 here in this video because I see a lot of similarities between this game and Dark Souls 2, and I'm liking those similarities. I'm generally finding those to be really good. So that's a little nitpick. I didn't think the intro cinematic was as good as some of the other games, as some of the more recent ones, both in its context. I mean, its content and its production. I just thought that was a little, but I mean, it's kind of going to be the end of my nitpicks. I think this game is extremely good. So what you're seeing here is my first 45 minutes of the game. I have played several hours beyond this now, so I know a little bit what's going on, but some of what you're going to see is me being unfamiliar with the mechanics, trying to understand what's different about the game mechanically than the previous ones. To say one word on that, I'll say this is definitely a Soulsborne game. I think everybody knows that probably by now, but this game is not like Sekiro. It's got some elements of Sekiro. Okay, you can jump a little bit, although I haven't found the jumping to be particularly meaningful. Jumping with your horse buddy is meaningful, but jumping as a person doesn't do that much. You can sneak and do a little bit of mild stealth, but I think those are just little additions. They feel like little additions, things they learned in Sekiro that they could add to the formula that was absolutely laid out in the Dark Souls games and in Bloodborne. So I think this is very much within the Soulsborne continuum, as opposed to being something different. A return to that form and format. Now, I personally appreciate that because I love those games, and I like them a lot better than Sekiro. I loved Sekiro. It's a fantastic game. So first of all, let's start thinking about these places, right? Let's start doing something that's a little archaeological. So we start the game here. You're going to see I spend a lot of time exploring these opening environments really deeply because I had no idea. I didn't know when. I kind of assumed that these were going to be our hub world areas like in the previous games. I know that this is an open world game, but I thought, well, it probably will still have a hub world. And it turns out it does actually have a sort of hub later in the game, but you don't actually access that for quite a while. These are, you start in a sort of inconsequential zone. I actually completely missed the tutorial. Went back and played it 3-4 hours later. Just missed it. Just walked right past it, which would have been helpful. So they don't force you to go through the tutorial. The tutorial is kind of optional. But this, thinking about the architecture in place here in this opening sequence, first of all, we start in this area that's very church-like. And a thing I've noticed about the games is they seem to be borrowing a lot from Christian symbolism and iconography, more so than the previous games. The older games absolutely do some of that. Dark Souls 3 flirted with it perhaps the most, but this game's quite overt about it. The churches and buildings are very reminiscent of Christian churches in their structure and cathedrals, and then there's straight up we're going to see it in a little while, but there's straight up crucifixion imagery later on, just crucified people. So there's, we know Japanese developers have played around with Christian symbolism and iconography forever in video games. I'm thinking of our Xenogears and such. but I don't know if they've done quite so much in a FromSoft game. So that was an interesting thing. So there's a lot of inspiration there happening. As I said, I'm really exploring these environments. First of all, because I was just loving this world. What a cool mood. Obviously, in addition to Christian imagery, we have a lot drawn from Norse mythology, which we knew that was made pretty clear in all the trailers and stuff. Not that I watched the trailers, that I didn't, but I was aware that there was a lot of references to that. And this huge tree, which is, I think, obviously meant to be referential to Yggdrasil or the life tree. I mean, the thing it most reminds me of immediately is Dragon Quest XI, which is a similar like floating magical tree in the middle of the world that the whole plot kind of revolves around in some ways. But I think that they're both drawing from similar Western influences with that, which is cool and interesting. So we've got Christian iconography and we've got Norse iconography intermixed. We're going to see here, I think this game does at least as good a job, if not a better job, of the Dark Souls games of having interestingly layered landscapes. I'm going to talk a lot about landscapes, both in this video and any future ones that I do about this game. This game is obviously much more landscape-based. So in terms of an opening, not surprising. I think I get one decent dodge roll in here and then get slaughtered. Not surprisingly, the game has an opening where you wander into an open field, an extremely powerful boss drops down and murders you in 1 or 2 hits, and you wake up somewhere else. Which, it's a trope. It's we can call it a tradition, maybe. I guess it's a tradition at this point of the series. But they do, but that does it happens, they play with that. I was had not gotten comfortable with the controls at all at that point. And then we have a second wake up from death in a new place that's also not the hub world. And this is the area where I absolutely just missed the tutorial. Just walked right by it and got by without it. You don't need it if you've played one of the previous games, though. There's a couple of small changes. Also a bit of a tradition. You die, and your dead body lying on the floor is discovered by a creepy lady who's got her eyes covered, who says creepy stuff to you. In this case, the addition of our horse friend, Princess Mononoke-ass horse buddy, who everybody I'm sure is going to love. Very memeable. Torrent. Torrent's sweetie. Torrent's our hero. One thing that I'll note, this isn't an archaeology thing, but just more of a game design thing. This character here plays a much more active role, it seems like, in the story than previous Firekeeper type figures, like the doll from Bloodborne or the Firekeepers. She's more important, it seems like, and I like that. I appreciate that. That's interesting, where she seems to have quite an active role in the game. Take a breath here. We'll get a view of this second little environment. Again, really quick intermixing of different cultural influences and religious influences. I love these little tree sproutling things, which I don't really know what those are yet because I'm not far enough into the story. I went bonkers on reading. Like I said, I came to these games late, and I've never played one of these games, with the exception of Sekiro, where it was irrelevant when the game was new. So this is my first time playing the game as a part of an active community, and I'm having an absolute blast with that. I did some summoning. I got myself summoned for a way too difficult boss and got slaughtered with some buds several times. That was really fun. This, by the way, is where the tutorial is. You're supposed to just jump into that pit. I did not trust it, because here's a difference, a mechanical difference. You can jump quite a distance without being hurt. You can be hurt from falls, and you can die from falls, but you have to fall very far away. So this drop down into this pit which would definitely have killed you in any of the previous games, will not even hurt you. So that's, again, a little bit more Sekiro. But unlike Sekiro, who could, literally jump to almost any distance and not be hurt, that your character in this can be hurt. So a little bit of an intermixing of the two there. But that's where the tutorial area is. You can see me. Should I do this? I mean, this creepy guy is telling me I should jump in there. And you never trust. One thing any Dark Souls players will tell you is you never trust a creepy guy telling you to jump in a hole. Never trust that. But I'm having an absolute blast with the online mechanics and the activity of this. The fact that you really can't just Google stuff. I love that. Those ideas are still sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I made a dumb little help video to help people find a popular character that I just stumbled across naturally, organically, and there was no video that was here's how you find this character. So I just made it yesterday and threw it up on YouTube. I'm having a blast with that. That's so exciting to be a part of that. And at a time when these games have more cultural weight than ever before, they're only growing in popularity. So that's exciting. Like I said, I'm gonna play through this whole first playthrough, continuing to avoid information about the game and try and play it really blind and build my own ideas, my own notions of what the game's themes are and what the game's story is. And it's just as obtuse a game as the previous ones, which I love. Some people hate. Whatever. It's a aesthetic choice, and it's fun to really not be able to look stuff up. So not only can I not really look stuff up, but I'm going to actively try not to. Once I beat the game once, so I get through the game once, I'm going to go on and I'll watch all of Adi's videos, and I'll go read the Wikipedia, and I'll do a second playthrough where I, do all the NPC quest lines. I'm sure going to botch all the NPC quest lines, probably get them all killed, tragically. It'll be great pathos. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Blork Chan, the blockchain knight, just finding his dead body after 30 hours of trying to help him, and I'll inherit his boots or whatever from his dead body. I can't wait. So this second little area that we wake up in, somewhat subterranean, we're starting to see an early element of the gameplay here, which is an inside-outside sort of vibe. Interestingly, we've been mostly in interior spaces so far. Quite soon, the game is going to open up into its exterior world, and then we'll see the game is going to fluidly move us in and out of internal and external spaces. Again, I'm really taking my time here. Here's another place where we can see an interesting palimpsest of cultural and artistic traditions, where we have this quite old-looking stonework with these more classically inspired columns, these pots that look like they're ripped clean out of Bloodborne, and they might entirely be. By the way, I am not an anti-reuse of assets guy. I absolutely not. I think that reuse of assets is a great way for studios to be a little more efficient and maybe take it a bit easier on their workers. So I was one of the people who was dunking on that guy who shared the GIF of Horizon Zero Dawn mechanic with the same animation in Horizon Forbidden West, and I was like, dude, you're an idiot. Come on. All right, so here's our great Fallout 3-esque. What a terrible game to compare this to. But Fallout 3, of course, has that famous sequence where you walk outside and it just hits you in the face with the world. All the Souls games have that too, but a really impressive one here, because we're getting our first view at this incredible landscape, the open worldiness of this, the breath of the wildiness of this. People are going to obnoxiously, repeatedly compare this game to Breath of the Wild, including me. So get ready for that. Get ready for those references. So, of course, I love Breath of the Wild. And a lot of the things I love about Breath of the Wild, and I talk about in my videos about that game, is that this game has a similar thoughtful engagement with the idea of cultural and natural landscapes. So we can see, looking out here, this is a great opportunity while we're talking to this guy. Or gal, I don't know what this... He's got a creepy voice. Looking out at this this landscape, just like in Breath of the Wild. The artists here have done a realistic, thoughtful, artistic, interesting mixing of the natural landscape and the cultural landscape. So most of my videos, I talk a lot about cultural landscapes and archaeological sites and how games can be like that. But archaeologists are also very interested in landscapes at different scales. And that means we as humans, we interact with natural landscapes, right? The natural elements of a landscape are its biology, its ecology, the plants and animals that live in it, its geology, right? The stones and natural land, those sorts of parts of the landscape. And then the cultural landscape, right? The built environment, so-called. That's a buzzy word in archaeology sometimes. The so-called built environment, the parts of the environment that are built by people and added to that, and mixing with the themes, perhaps, or perhaps at least just the vibe here, the idea that we have this quite beautiful natural landscape with cultural features jutting out of them, the natural landscape elements melding with it, this castle up on this cliffside. It's difficult to discern what is castle and what is cliff, right? So I think that's supposed to reference maybe a little bit of unnaturalness, right? This melding of the cultural and the natural landscapes. Whole lot of cool archaeology-ish elements at play here that we can really take a close look at. I'm going to have a lot of fun thinking about as I play this game. Again, Breath of the Wild is a game that did this really well, and I do think they've learned a lot from that game in this one. So again, I'm just really taking my time, and so I'm going to get in trouble because I'm doing this kind of thing with every little area and just wandering around and staring at parts. And this game is huge, and if I do that too much, I'm going to starvation die in my chair. I love this, again, part of that natural landscape. There's animals that just kind of hang out, and you can kill them and harvest little bits of materials for making stuff, or just scare them away, or just look at them. So they're quite beautiful, and they have cool little AI movements and such. That's really cool. This is a part here, I figured this out when I was recording this the first time. I stand still here for a couple minutes because I was trying really hard to figure out how to two-hand my weapon. I usually play these games with a two-handed large weapon with no shield. That's my preferred playstyle, at least for a first playthrough of a game. Then I'll play around with different builds after that. And so I wanted to do that, and the other games you can just push triangle. In this game you have to do I'm playing on the PS5, by the way, of course, so you're going to hear me. I'm just going to use those button combinations. Sorry for my Xbox and PC viewers. You can do the translation yourself. But in the previous games, you just push triangle, and you could switch to back and forth between one and two-handed. And that had real interesting implications for especially PvP, because you can really expand your moveset, because there's just totally different animations, move animations, and between the one-handed and the two-handed moveset. This game, it's a more complicated button prompt. You have to hold down triangle and then push R1 to swap the two-hand. And you can do that mid-fight, but it does definitely add a kind of cumbersome quality. Now, I understand why they had to do this, because they've added some verbs to this game, right? You can jump now, and things like that. So they were working with a difficult real estate space on the controller and in buttons. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure whether the game has. I just have a standard controller, so I haven't checked to see if the game's got remappable controls. Maybe if you've got a fancy controller that's got like back paddles, or if you're playing on PC, obviously, and you can do some keybinds to make that a little bit easier for PvP. I've never been a big PvP guy. I was having a lot of time here, so I take a couple minutes here really reading through these multiplayer items. First of all, in great tradition, these multiplayer items are just like creepy, weird items that don't mean anything and have weird descriptions, but they have actual, like, incredibly important mechanical functions if you want to do anything multiplayer. So I was just trying to discern what the hell these things were. I still don't really fully know what the difference is between this thing, the small golden effigy, and the finger. They both seem to be ways to put yourself down for co-op, and I don't understand what the difference is. I'll figure it out. But I was just trying to read through these and understand them because, like I said, I love doing PvE co-op. I love doing summons, getting summoned, summoning people. I have a lot of fun with that. I don't really usually do the PvP much. To Platinum Dark Souls 3, you kind of have to do PvP, so I sort of vaguely taught myself how to do basic PvP for that game, and it wasn't actually all that. I didn't have all that much fun. The PvP in these games are great. They're so much fun, but I know it's a different vibe. It's a very different vibe. I love doing summonings and getting summoned to fight bosses, and I did that a little bit yesterday. In fact, this next little section here, I threw down my summoning sign and tried this. So right here, you're gonna immediately notice we got a big horse boy out there, big old horse boy, and you are not supposed to fight this guy. You're supposed to see him and sneak by him. I think the point of this is it's supposed to teach you, you can sneak by big enemies. Because this guy's a straight mini boss. He's gonna show up. I'm gonna dodge one attack here and just immediately gets owned by this guy. I don't even think I hit him. Maybe I hit him. I can't remember. Maybe not. Oh yeah, I got a couple hits in, but this guy's real tough, and I'm absolutely sure you can beat this guy here, for sure, and I'm sure a lot of people have done it, and I think that I probably could have done it if I maximalized my stubbornness, and I just spent like 2 or 3 hours iterating over and over again until I beat him, but I did, and I actually went back. The key I found to beating this guy, if you want to know, is to wait until you get your horse buddy. And I came back last night, about 11 o'clock last night, with my horse buddy. A few levels higher, but not much. And with my horse buddy, I was able to beat him by doing some horseback fighting. I was a little worried about the horseback fighting. I'm not a huge fan of like horseback stuff. Barely ever use it in Zelda. But the combat in the horse feels pretty good in this game. It's not as good as on foot, but it's cool to have that as an option. You can pull that out. So I've done a little slick cut here to make it look like I did not die to this guy 15 or so times in a row trying to beat him. And I've done a cut here to make it look like I just fought him twice and then gave up. That's not true. He killed me a good number of times, and I was able to get him down about halfway a couple of times, but then I moved on. So you're supposed to sneak by this guy. I thought this was an interesting choice that they did it twice in a row. Twice in a row they did you wake up or immediately killed by a much too difficult monster, and then you go again. All right, so a couple quick cuts here. We're coming towards the end here, but a couple cuts here just to show you some different areas and what they look like. Again, now we're out in the world here, and again, so there's that Christian, like literally. I mean, it's not necessarily Christian, but just these literally people being crucified. It's not in that cruciform form, but this is people being crucified. So that's there. That symbolism is there. And also just to show you a little bit of what the combat and what the world looks like. So as I was saying, right, we've got this natural landscape sort of reclaiming a cultural landscape, which is in some ways ripped clean off of Breath of the Wild, but I love the idea of seeing a FromSoft version of that. And just to give you a little idea what some of the mob fighting looks like too. It's interesting. A lot of the takes I've seen on this game so far are that it's a little bit more friendly and easier than previous games. And I gotta be totally honest, I don't really agree with that. I think it's easier than Sekiro, because Sekiro was sadistically hard. Really, by the end of that game, I did beat it, did not platinum it. By the end of it, I just wanted it to be over. I was so frustrated. It was a beautiful game, absolute masterpiece, gorgeous game, but good God, it was painfully hard to play. Yes, I am willing to admit that both of those things are true at the same time. For me, at least for me, not for everybody. But this game's easier than that. But I would say it's about as hard as Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, which I think are harder than Dark Souls 1 and 2. Demon Souls is harder than any of them, but for bad reasons. I'll let you decide whether you agree with me on that. But I get the game's a little more approachable in that it's not quite as indiscernible as previous games. There's there's just better tutorializing and there's more instructions. Yeah, that's more inviting. That's true. But the actual minute-to-minute gameplay is I don't think much easier. Now I haven't actually gotten to any serious bosses yet. I've fought a number of these mini bosses, like the horse guy, and they're satisfyingly challenging, but not overly challenging. But we'll see. I haven't gotten to like a major boss yet, and hit a wall there, so we'll see. But right now, I think that I would say that the difficulty is quite similar to the previous games, not more or less hard. Now, I mean, of course, you've got sort of scrub dudes like this, but all the games have that. That's they all have that sort of like raisin-headed undead dudes that you can just kind of kill in one or two hits, and you're supposed to grind on if you need to. So here's a little bit of that. I'll give you a better example of what the stealth elements look like in a minute. But this is quite typical of the average gameplay of the game and the experience of the landscape. It's got all the kind of visual storytelling of the previous games that we can think about archaeologically. Think about the tools and weapons and armor and clothing that we see on both enemies and deceased people and NPCs. That's more than both. And the placement of characters and items is quite slickly done, and we can learn a lot from that. I'm being obsessive about double checking to make sure my audio is actually recording after last night's. I'm scarred. I'm scarred for life after this experience last night. Although I'm perfectly happy. I think I'm actually this isn't like that different from what I said last night. I was worried that because this is entirely off the cuff, that some of my organic observations would be irredeemably lost, and that's not true. I can pretty much remember what I said last night, having similar reactions. And actually, I've now played several more hours of the game than I had when I recorded this yesterday, so that's nice to have that extra foreknowledge to be able to think critically about these very early parts. So this is a kind of common gameplay loop where you're on the outside of the overworld. You find like a little cave kind of thing, sort of Elder Scrolls like, and you can kind of wander into the cave, and there's maybe a little teeny micro bit of level design in here that's more reminiscent of previous FromSoft games. And you'll see that I left this in here. I do not look cool in this engagement, but I left this in here to show that you have to approach these thoughtfully, the way you would any other Dark Souls game, because I didn't there. I just jumped in there and tried to kill everybody, and I got ganged up on and murdered. And then the second time I went in, it's not a hard encounter at all. You just have to think about it a little bit. And, so my foolishness. So now I've done a little cut here. This is just right past those wolves, just so you didn't have to watch the same fight again, to show you what one of these little mini bosses looks like. You can just discover these on the world map. And this really you can see here, that's obviously that's how you pick up your souls. I didn't talk at all about that, but if you die, it's the same exact system as previous games. You can die, you drop a little thing on the ground, and if you can get back to it, you can get your souls back. Souls are called runes in this game. Souls or blood echoes. That same exact function. They're both for leveling up. They're your experience, and they're also. So the game is pretty. I guess the game is pretty forgiving. So you can absolutely play the game without a shield, as I'm doing here. The game has pretty generous iframes in the rolling animation. So you can see here, I'm successfully rolling through this, and I'm still feeling quite rusty with the mechanics at this point, and I'm able to time these dodges pretty well, and get the upper hand on this guy. I think I just died to this guy once, so it wasn't a super difficult challenge. You can backstab even these little mini bosses, but that was a really fun, exciting little fight to just discover. And he drops this talisman, which are kind of like rings, but you only get one slot. Maybe you unlock more slots later. I don't know. You get one slot for this talisman, and they give you a little bonus. I've only found a couple of these. They're quite rare so far. All right, so one last encounter to show you. Again, these are all really early. This is all, if you don't stand around staring at stuff like I did, you can do all this in the first 10 minutes probably. And this is another kind of encounter, and it's got both cool gameplay elements and is a cool little spot to think about archaeologically. Again, very reminiscent of Breath of the Wild, that these little ruined spaces just sitting in the environment. Now, you can sneak these guys. You're clearly supposed to sneak these guys. You'll notice I've, again, not very thoughtfully just run in here. And you're definitely supposed to Sekiro style sneak around and kind of, murder some of these guys before you engage. Because I made this much harder for myself than I needed to. By the way, those little glowing skulls that I just kicked, those have like soul items in them. I forget what they're called in this one. Rune items, I guess. The little things that just give you a few runes, and you have to smash them open. It took me quite a while to figure that out, so I missed a bunch of them. It's okay. They're not super consequential, but I got almost like a little Metal Gear Solid action here of trying to intermix some sneaking in with an active battle. The AI are not that smart. You can backstab guys like that. I found repeatedly that the backstab generally does not kill guys. It'll take them down to about 10% health, which sort of defeats the purpose, because then they just get up and then they warn everybody. So I don't know. But again, the almost Muso-like structure here. That's quite cool. These little encampments where there's a bunch of grunt guys that are pretty easy to kill, and then one sort of much stronger, tougher captain-like figure, which I've angered here, and who kicks my ass in this particular encounter. I valiantly fought him for a while, and he definitely does kill me if I remember correctly. And he's tough. He's got a lot of attack animations. He hits pretty hard. He's got that big giant shield that makes him quite hard to get at. It's a pretty tough fight. So you've got to be thoughtful about these engagements. But I love this, again, Breath of the Wild like sort of this little village here. You can start to think about what is this village? I don't know. I have no idea yet what this landscape is. It's got castles, it's got churches, it's got little ruined villages and towns, it's got caves with things in it. It's a sort of hodgepodge nightmare of level design right now, and yet I'm pretty darn sure that they have done this quite thoughtfully, and that this world has a cohesiveness to it that will become apparent as we go. So we're coming up on the last few seconds here. He's going to kill me with his big old spear. All right, well, everybody, thanks so much. I really am having an absolute blast with this game. I'm having so much fun enjoying it. I'd like to do some more of these, maybe live plays for y'all, if people are interested. So let me know if you are interested. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know, because that's really helpful. And I'll keep making them. Thanks, everybody.